You are not entitled to your reader's time. This makes it paramount that the first pages of your story keep your reader's attention and encourages them to keep reading. You don't have to do it all on the first page. Most readers will give you some leeway. But the sooner you spark your reader's interest, the better. That's why the first few pages, the first page especially, is so critical. Hi, I'm Garrett, a new writer, sharing what I learn as I go. There are many lists of do's and do nots that you can find on the internet, and some of those are super helpful in improving your writing. As with everything, though, these lists should be viewed with skepticism. With that said, let's go over 4 elements that will fix a bad first page and keep your readers interested, intrigued, and turning pages. Element 1. Promises to your reader start on the first page, and these promises must be kept. Another way to think about this is through the lens of tone. Your first page sets the tone for the type of story you've written. If you have fantastical elements on the first page of your story, you're promising your reader that they're getting a fantasy. You aren't just promising the reader the category of book they're going to get, though. You're also promising what kind of style it will be written in. Not all readers are compatible with your writing style. There really isn't anything that you can do about that, but it may be something to keep in mind. If you know your style doesn't appeal to your intended audience, then you'll need to add tools to your writing tool chest and build the skills to appeal to the right people. Now, if this video appeals to you, don't forget to hit that like button. These promises and others will be made whether your story is great or not. What will make your story great is when your promises align with what you're trying to accomplish with your story. Element 2, and this one is pretty critical. The first page needs to grab the reader's attention in some way. It doesn't have to be a fight scene. It doesn't even have to be particularly exciting, but the reader needs a reason to keep going. Gaining a reader's attention isn't always easy, but it doesn't have to be as hard as we often make it. Attention is captured when you get the reader to ask one of the 3 W's with which we're all familiar. Who? What? Why? Who is this character? What is this character doing? Why is this character doing this? Keep in mind, these W questions don't have to focus on character specifically, but can apply to your story in general. When you get your reader to genuinely pose one of these questions, you've captured their interest. Your job in the first few pages is to lead your writer to these questions. The third element of a great first page is that of immersion. If you can successfully immerse your reader in your story, then you have them. They're yours. Unfortunately, much of a reader's immersion depends on the reader themselves. An important lesson for writers to learn is that you can't control everything, and that includes how every reader will read your work. But there are certain things you can eliminate to not take away from a reader's immersive experience. First, by using excessive filler words, you run the risk of pulling your reader from your story. It may be a good idea to ruthlessly pull all of the filler words away from your first page. Not only does this eliminate that risk, but it makes your story come off as better written. Second, jargon specific to the world that you've built for your story will likely confuse your readers if it's seen on page 1. Introduction of these words should probably be done later on. Names, of course, are an exception, but don't introduce too many characters on the first page. This can easily confuse readers if there's too many names and people to keep track of. Third, info dumping will likely pull your reader from the story, especially if it's done on page 1. Instead of dumping all your world's lore on the reader in the first few pages, spread it out across the whole book. If the reader needs all the lore on page 1 for your story to make sense, then your story is likely including way too many unnecessary details and way too big. And yeah. Fourth, misspelled words is a huge turnoff for many readers. The first few pages should be scrupulously edited. If there are misspelled words or typos on the first page, it is a signal to the reader that they aren't reading something that was given enough time and effort for it to be its best version. Now that we have the do nots that will likely pull your reader from an immersive experience, let's look at some ways to bring an immersive experience for your reader on the first page. First, your characters have 5 senses. You can use those to help immerse the reader in the story. It shouldn't all have to be what is seen. Second, goes back to the showing versus telling adage. The more you show, the more your reader will be sucked in. Showing is the exact opposite of exposition and info dumping. Imagine starting your story by telling the reader that 2 people were fighting, and then imagine the fight yourself. You want to show the fight rather than explain it. Thirdly, your first page doesn't have to be the first page you write. Even if you're writing your story from the beginning, if you or perhaps someone not as close to your story reads those first few pages and finds it boring, skip to where you started to find it interesting. That will make a great starting point. You can either throw out what you've written previously or reshuffle it and use it in a different part of your story. Let me know in the comments below what immerses you when you read. Alright, the final element, and if you can do this, you won't just keep your readers, but you'll gain loyal fans who will want to read all of your stuff. If you can get your reader to emote something on the very first page, then you've written something good. I personally don't think it matters which emotion, love, hate, fury, happiness. All of these emotions will have the desired effect. When your reader feels an emotion, the story becomes real because emotions are real. Though it is very hard to get your reader to emote on the first page, you can at least set up a chapter where emotions will be felt. You can do this by putting your character in a vulnerable situation or by drawing upon common human experiences that will allow your reader to empathize with your characters. If you're a new writer, check out this video on what expectations for your first novel should be.